very much. So what I'm going to talk about today is how to develop a creative line of inquiry with a sound economic focus, which of course it's something that we are all interested in. First of all, because of the Young Economist of the Year award that requires a student to come up with a line of inquiry that has to do with economics. But this also will come handy in preparing for the new living cert, in particular for the research study that also asks students to come up with a research question that is related to economics and answer that with their tools. But most of all, I really believe that these are both chances that students have to live a very enjoyable and rewarding experience. And these also might attract them to, pursue an economics, a career in economics, going into tertiary education, and of course I'm self-interested in here. I remember I took part to a similar course when I was in high school, and it really changed the way I thought about economics. And I really love the idea that many Irish students can take part to these and get a very, very nice experience and maybe be convinced of going on and study economics. So going back to our Young Economist of the Year award, the evaluation criteria, the first three, actually all mention the importance of finding a research question that is related to economics. It must be related to the Sustainable Development Goals, and it needs to be clearly stated and easy to understand. So the first three evaluation criteria all mention something about the research question and how to develop this line of inquiry. It is also important for all the other criteria that will be taken into account by the committee, as having an interesting, compelling research question will help a lot students in the latter stage of the project. So also to perform very well in the other evaluation criteria, in gathering data, in describing their findings, and coming up with some conclusions. So it's very important to get the first step, the research question right. Same goes for the Living Cert research study. The first 2 points indicated by the official documentation when it comes to completing the research study both revolve around finding a good research question. So they ask to choose an individual line of inquiry that is related to the chosen research topic, and it will be important to apply a relevant economic concept to this line of inquiry. So this is why I'm very, very happy to be discussing about the best ways to support students in doing so. Again, there's a very clear overlap between the Young Economist of the Year award and the Living Certs, but what is most important is that they both are great chances for students to get this very important and hopefully enjoyable experience in trying and use economic tools to answer a research question they genuinely care about. And this is the first of 2 core principles that, I really believe all of our discussions revolve around. There is no way out. It is very important that you make sure the students actually do care about the topic. Why? First of all, we really do want them to feel involved and enjoy the process, and this will help them to, overcome some frustrations that, are always around the corner when it comes to learning, when it comes to doing research. If we ensure that, we also can tell for sure that the outcomes are going to be better. So it's very important that we let students explore something that they really do care about, because it will make this experience more pleasant and is going to increase the likelihood of the outcome to be satisfactory. On the other hand, though, it is also very important that these research questions, the line of inquiry, have a specific focus and a clear motivation. Why so? Well, it is required by the guidelines, but the reason why guidelines stress this point is because identifying a specific line of inquiry will make students' life easier. It will allow them to come up with a more interesting final outcome and to look at more in depth into the specific topic they're interested in. However, in my experience, there is a bit of tension between the two. If I think myself as a student, when I first approached economics, well, all I cared about was the bigger picture. When I joined economics, the Department of Economics of my undergrads university, I really cared about, financial crisis. It was 2009, I'm Italian, so of course, I cared about all the big questions. Why is this happening? But I soon found out that in order to understand the big pictures, you sort of have to decompose it in small bits and try and answer them one by one. So by doing so, we really can avoid students to get frustrated and make sure that they feel like they've better understood a topic using the tools provided by the secondary school curriculum. In a way, the Sustainable Development Goals that are the major theme of the Young Economist of the Year award help in making sure that they can find a narrow topic to focus on, because although themselves those 17 development goals are quite broadly phrased, and this is one of the critiques that have actually been moved by the academic world to these goals, they're actually hierarchically organized in a way that make it possible to identify within the goals some smaller topics that students can focus on. Those smaller topics are referred to in the official website as targets. So here, just to give you an example, Goal 13 is something that I believe many students do care about, and we're grateful they do care about this sort of things. Goal 13 says, take urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts. Of course, again, this is something that they will definitely care about, but they will definitely need some more focus if they want to develop an autonomous and creative research question. A good way to start would be to look at targets within this goal. As an example, target 13.1 says, strengthen resilience and adaptive capacity to climate-related hazards and natural disasters in all countries. So already, the goal can be sort of the flashy thing that catches the students' attention, but then there are all of those small targets that sort of suggest a more narrow and specific angle through which look at this topic, still leaving students plenty of room for their own interests, for their own creativity. In this case, for example, well, are we talking about people in Ireland, or maybe of the international scenario? Are we talking about firms, households, farmers? So still, even when focusing on a narrower target, students will have a lot of room to develop something that they do definitely care about, and they will have some room to express their creativity and their interests. Even going a step ahead, all of those targets within goals also have some indicators that are, I believe, some potentially very useful starting point for the analysis. Those indicators are some measures that the UN uses in order to check where we are at achieving these goals. Therefore, it will give some clear directions and some clear signals on what to look for, what to look at when studying these goals and targets. In particular, a couple of indicators that I found related to this target are the number of persons affected by disaster per 1,000 people, and the number of countries with national and local disaster risk reduction strategies. So already students have some sort of a head start on the sort of data that they might be had to try and look at try and see how Ireland compares with in the international context, and so on and so forth. This is also clear when looking at the second development goal, that it's very generic and again very impactful and very important. That is to say, end hunger. This can be used again to catch students' attention. It's definitely something that we should be caring about. Hunger is still very much a problem throughout the world. But again, perhaps too wide a topic to actually being able as a secondary school student to write about. Targets sort of help into that. There is one that is number 2.3 that says double the agricultural productivity and incomes of small-scale food producers, in particular of women, indigenous people, and family farmers. So there's already a bit of a hint on something that is a bit more approachable already. Talks about agricultural productivity, income of small farmers, so something that students can perhaps relate to more directly, and that can sort of give a hint on how to continue with their project. And again, indicators provide this sort of hint, this sort of head starts on where to look for the statistics and what sort of statistics to look for. Here we have the volume of production per person in small farms, or the average income of small-case food producers. So it's already sort of a hint on what sort of data they might have to look for, and help also in the following stages of the project. Again, this sort of hierarchical organization of the standard development goals can be leveraged in order to help students in focusing on a specific line of inquiry, but also in grabbing their attention with these goals that are quite, are quite massive in their importance and are very likely to sort of resonate in students' interests. Looking at some of the 2020 winners, Aoife, Maeve, Ella, and Elizabeth, they actually started from a target when developing their project on the impact of the use of supermarket vouchers on the environment and our economy. And they looked at target 12.3 that says that we should halve the per capita global food waste at both the retail and the consumer level. So rather than starting big, they sort of found directly a target that they could focus on, and they looked at some local issue, namely the use of supermarket voucher and its impact on this specific target. By narrowing their research focus like this, they managed to cite a multitude of local sources, from local newspapers to a survey that they organized autonomously on the topic. So they were actually able to ask people, I think they involved teachers in the school and so on, about their opinion on the supermarket vouchers and their use. So by focusing on a rather narrow topic, they actually managed to come up with a super interesting project, and very, very well done, and showcase their understanding of the economic side of it. Again, they had this great idea, and you might be wondering, well, where can we sort of direct students in order for them to find some inspiration and develop their own autonomous ideas? Of course, being familiar with these goals will help, but they might be willing also, to dig a bit more in depth, to look at some more local applications and so on. So I believe that what's important here is that they keep their minds very open to be using international as well as national sources, and bear in mind that variety is really important, because again, what really matters is the process, the way they came up with a research question, why they're interested in that, their motivation, and therefore absorbing a lot of different sources is probably a very good idea. variety is important, yes, but again, keeping the guard up. So it's very important that teachers guide them into disentangling facts from opinion, especially when looking at newspapers. You know, these difference can be a bit blurred. Using economic sources or sources coming from economics and newspaper and so on can help in framing the research questions in more technical terms, but it is not necessarily the case that they should only focus on that. So again, I would really encourage you and the students to explore as many sources as possible. And importantly, I think that another thing that will help a lot is to keep track of what they read and how they thought things in the process. So I started by reading this article on this newspaper, and then I sort of went and read something more from the international perspective. And all of that would really create a nice narrative behind the research that will really help the project develop and also to build these interest in students themselves. Just a bunch of international sources that I think you and students will find very helpful. The official Standard Development, Sustainable Development Goals website is quite good, as it provides immediately some data and statistics on where we are at with those goals that can be used to motivate the analysis. Vox has plenty of explanatory pieces on some economic phenomena, in particular the energy and environment and the business and finance sections have plenty of very accessible material that I would invite you and students to look at. The core econ textbook also has a very large number of real-life applications of economic concepts. Is completely for free, and I would really encourage as many students and teachers as possible to use that. And importantly, I really do believe that these international sources are not necessarily an alternative to domestic sources. So it might be the case that the motivation comes from this bigger picture, international issues, and so on. And then students might be willing to narrow it down to something more local, to something they can relate to more easily. So moving on to domestic sources, well, the Irish Times is something that I use all the time with my own students, the undergrad level, because there's plenty of unbiased information on local policies, but also some great opinion pieces. And again, some opinions sometimes clash. So they give the students the chance to sort of see both sides of some issues, and in light of their own and independent research, maybe take a side, or maybe just say, okay, I acknowledge that there's a trade-off there, and I just want to be exploring even further what can I say based on my economic knowledge. ESRI also have a number of very interesting publications related to Ireland that you can explore by keyword search. So it's something that is very easy to do, and most of that is very accessible. And they also have a number of more articulate reports that they can use to find some more reference and data sources, although I know that, you know, the talking about data will be later on, but still I believe there's plenty of interesting stuff there. Central Bank of Ireland, they have a newly established climate change unit, so I'm fairly sure that there's going to be a lot of interesting output coming on sustainable development goals, so it might be a good idea to keep an eye on that. And a bit of cheeky self-promotion here, University of Maynooth, we have developed a number of videos for leading search students where they can see some real-life application of economic concepts. So that also can be a very nice way to sort of see some examples of textbook economic concepts applied to real-world scenarios. When it comes to this, I have two main suggestions when it comes to this idea of using economics and applying economics concepts. The first one is really not to be shy. I would hate for students to believe that they have to look for economics. Economics is everywhere. Whenever somebody makes a decision, whenever there are trade-offs to be examined, economics is always there. So I would really encourage you to in turn encourage students to be brave and let them showcase their understanding. If they think there is economics somewhere, chances are there is. Of course, they're more likely to come up with all these ideas and seeing textbook concepts in the real world when they care about the topic. So once again, this is just to stress again how important it is that students do care about the topic. And in this case, what I really believe is that the more is better. So whereas it is a good idea to focus the attention when it comes to the research question, when it comes to examining it, there is no point for students to be shy. If they see many applications of economics in the way perhaps there's some externalities, such as in the issue of the voucher or in the way the market is organized and so on, let them explore all of these lines. And at the same time, let students to be very open-minded. There's a number of textbook applications that they can directly apply to real case scenarios, but let them also go beyond that and make new connections. This is going to be, I think, very rewarding for them. So really try and not limit them. Let them see where they're going and let them explore the topic they picked from different angles. That is completely fine, and they should actually be pushed to do so. Again, just from past winners, I'm very aware of time, so I'll try not to spend too much on these. What I've noticed is that some of the topics were immediately related to economics and quite hardcore as well. But again, some other, like the case of supermarket vouchers, were apparently very sort of mundane, but the girls really managed to apply plenty of economic concepts there. They talked about the market structure of supermarket industry in Ireland. They talked about food inflation. They talked about social costs and externalities. They talked about diminishing marginal returns. So really, I guess that's what I meant with pick a very narrow topic, but then don't be afraid to see all of the potential applications of economics concepts there, because if you look hard enough, they are there. And finally, my open-minded line. That is to say, when we talk about externalities, sure, probably in textbooks you see stuff like the tasks on plastic, you have graphs like this, and those applications are actually very insightful and very important for students to understand what we're talking about. And they shouldn't be afraid of using these sort of very basic textbook ideas in their project. There's nothing wrong with that, as long as they showcase their understanding. But I would also encourage them to look a bit more also at the broader picture. This, in particular, is the last slide that I wanted to leave you. That shows some recent estimates of the impact of global warming and climate change on the world economies. And as we can see, those that will be most deeply affected are countries in sub-Saharan Africa or in areas of the world that are already quite poor. So when we talk about externalities, we're also talking about these types of externalities. Who is producing pollution and who is suffering for it? Who is in the bottom room making the decisions about how to proceed from now on? And are countries that are suffering the most from this adequately represented? So again, also this can be taught as a form of externalities that students might be willing to sort of explore further on. So again, I guess my message is really, although it is important for them to be aware of all the textbook scenarios, also let them read, let them enjoy the experience, and if they come up with a broader application of these economic concepts, that's that will be the optimal outcome, will be rewarding for them, and yeah, we really hope that both you and the students will really enjoy this process. Thank you.